Hello, Long Island. Really nice to be here today because I went to the very first one of this, as I said earlier, and things have changed quite a lot. Like, I did not expect so many people. I'm very pleased to see so many children and families playing old games. I saw some kids playing Doom and trying to figure out the controls, and it was very interesting. But I am Anatoly Shashkin. Some of you might know me as Das Nostalgic. Thank you for coming. And this is what I have for you today. I called this presentation Das Gaming 101, and then after I finished, I instantly read an article that said, don't call anything ever anything 101. So now it's called Introduction to DOS Gaming, Past and Present. So what is DOS? Well, DOS stands for Disk Operating System, and I mean, many computers had disk operating system, but what I mean when I talk about DOS is one disk operating system in particular. One designed by this man, Tim Patterson, bought by this man, Bill Gates, for this company, International Business Machines, licensed to them, for this machine. The original IBM PC, released in 1981, August 12th, and subsequently named Time Magazine Machine of the Year. And it was, I like how happy this lady is that she's getting the printout, but it was a pretty boring machine, and it wasn't really meant to play games. It was a business machine for, well, we see some charts here. So it was mostly used for, word processing and spreadsheets, all that stuff. It was good for it, and it looked like this originally. That's what DOS looked like. And there really wasn't much gaming intended, but it did ship with one particular very famous example, since Microsoft provided BASIC for many systems and machines, hardware as well as software. They of course shipped PC DOS with BASIC, and it came with this game, Donkey, co-written by Bill Gates, where you would be a car, racing car, streaming down the road and trying to avoid one key game, way ahead of its time. Where you would try to avoid a collision, an inevitable collision with a donkey. Very exciting. But things weren't like this for long, and they evolved. And let's take a look at the eras of MS-DOS gaming. And when I say eras, what I really mean is sort of graphic standards as they were introduced, basically. So what you have graphically is CGA, Color Graphics Adapter, and while being named Color Graphics, it was mainly, the graphics were for the text mode mostly. So it could display 16 colors in text mode, but in a graphical mode, it can only pretty much stick to only one of those palettes. And this is what games look like. Well, can't have everything. And for the time, that was good enough. And of course, EGA, 16 colors on screen. Not any 16 colors, these specific 16 colors. But as you can see, things are kind of shaping up, and things are getting a bit more exciting. There's a Commander Keen here, legend. And then we have VGA, 256 colors on screen at the same time. Not these specific 256 colors, but no more than 256 at the same time. And then we have Beyond, but that's way later in the era nobody really cares about. So let's, hopefully this was not going to be too loud. Maybe it'll attract some people. So let's take a look at these eras in an example of one game. Now, because these eras are not strictly defined, even though the standards were introduced throughout different years, people had all the machines with these standards at the same time. You would buy a machine that was older when you could afford it, and you would be stuck with 4 colors, but that's what good enough for you. And all the software had to support all these standards at the same time. So there's like an interesting thing that pretty much is only exclusive to the PC gaming, because in other machines, even home computers, you would have pretty strict configurations of those machines that really weren't changed. And while IBM PC was pretty flexible by its open nature. So let's take a look. This might be loud. right, that was exciting. Both standards are pretty much from the original launch date, kind of. So that's what you would have. I mean, it's not bad. Could be worse, I guess. Now let's move on. All right, now we're getting somewhere. I actually quite like this. The ad-lib from 1987 and EGA from 1984, 16 colors. Doesn't look bad. And of course, all right, yeah. If you had that in 1990, you were rich, and I envy you. Yeah, so all of these, you would not buy a separate version for each one, of course. You would just buy one, and you would get all these choices. And the developers would have to sort of adjust to it, which is pretty interesting and a pretty unique thing. And of course, the game would look completely different, depending on what you had.
It's okay. Just my computer.
Thanks. All right, so of course in the beginning, in the very beginning, the games kind of looked like this. This is actually the Microsoft Adventure, the Colossal Cave version. You know, games using your imagination, actually pretty good. Then shortly after, we see some improvement here, and by 1983, this is actually a fairly legendary game, Digger. What you can't hear is the popcorn, legendary sort of electronic tune that's being played from the PC speaker when you play it. Pretty exciting. And also from 1983, this is a Burger Time port for DOS, which actually uses composite CGA graphics, a mode not often used and required a special monitor to be plugged in. And you can find out all about that mod in that mode in the 8-Bit Guys video that I wish was called I wish I had $1 for every time somebody mentions that video to me. So why should you play DOS games? Console people, if there are any here. That's because they're very different to what would you have on consoles because of different audiences. I'm going to demonstrate it using this example. This is the original ad for the Nintendo Entertainment System. Ages 8 to adult. Whole family is present, so that's the ad. And this is the ad for the IBM PC. And something else to keep in mind is this is actually a page from a Byte magazine from 1984, fall of 1984, 3 years after the original IBM PC has launched. And let's pay very close attention to these prices here. Now, this is the price for actually not the original IBM PC, but the IBM PC XT, which is kind of like the IBM PC with blackjack and hookers at the time. So it was just like an expanded model. Now, pay close attention to those prices. Now, all of those things are optional, so they're not included in the base price. But let's take a look at the base price. $4,395 $1984. Who wants to guess how bad inflation is currently? That is actually a very good guess because it's $10.5 grand. And just like today, for that amount, you can get a car. For that money, it's actually more money than what I owe for my new car currently. So, needless to say, if you had a household with a computer, it was a very specific household. Now, I don't want to say rich household because it was not really a status thing. In the 80s, I mean. It's more like somebody needed that computer for work, for something serious, engineer, or, I don't know, teacher, programmer. So with that come different sort of genres of game. And of course, we had our fair share of Twitch games, games that everybody wants to play, here's Alley Cat, one of my favorite games, very early on, originally for the IBM PC Junior. Great game. Port of Bubble Bobble, of course. Great music. Can you hear the tune in your head? You're welcome. Actually, fun trivia about this, programmed entirely from memory without reference, because it was a programmer's favorite game. Very nice. And there's from Crusader, later a bit, also twitchy, sort of shooty thing. But not all games on the IBM PC were twitchy shooty. Of course, we have CRPGs, and those, of course, go way back from before IBM PC to the Apple II days, mostly because nerds who had those computers also liked playing Dungeons and Dragons. It was a big thing in the 70s. And of course, what would be a cool way to play Dungeons and Dragons if you could just avoid having people play with you, or Dungeon Master. So of course, CRPGs were created so one person can play RPGs, or a Dungeon Master can create it and then pass it along to an unlimited amount of people. So we have games, of course, like Wizardry that inspired many Western RPGs. Here's your typical battle screen here. But things, of course, move on, and Western RPGs take a very different turn from what Eastern RPGs who also, well, they all take inspiration from Wizardry, but it's weirdly branching, right? Like for anybody who played Final Fantasy and the likes, they're very different games. So this is more sort of graphically approachable, point-and-clicky game, dungeon crawler. Ultima 7. All right, this is a great game. If somebody for some reason have not played it, you should. This is like an incredible virtual world where you can rummage through people's stuff and steal their books and arm yourself with a fork and go stabbing people. And it's completely open world, and it's very steep system requirements for the time. Took like 10 minutes to load on my machine. It was quite incredible. Great game. Very awkward to play these days, but it's amazing. And of course, since we're bringing up Ultima, let's bring up Ultima Underworld. And nothing too special about it except for its 3D. In fact, it's so 3D. It was so new at the time that I can't not show this ad that I absolutely love. The whole point of this ad is they don't know how to explain 3D to you. So what they do is literally just by screenshot, they're pointing out moving forward, going around, and looking up and down. And it's still like here, like you still can't comprehend what this is until you see it in person. Great. Good stuff. So CRPGs, of course, and all the way to the tail end of DOS Live, there's a Fallout series that goes on to this very day. Very successful, I hear. Simulators. Same people who like played Dungeons and Dragons also wanted to fly and drive things they had no access to. So here come the incredible, very realistic simulations. Microsoft Flight Simulator from 1982, and actually its version from 1993. Quite a difference here. Look up or don't look up the ad for this game. It's yikes. It didn't age well. And of course, Indy 500, legendary game. Unfortunately, can't show it in motion, but it looks incredible for 1989 if you had a machine that could handle it. It actually dynamically scales to your processor's sort of capabilities, and it looks great on no matter what you run it on. It's quite an amazing. Test Drive 3, everybody hates this game. I love it. It's open world driving game. Very uncommon. I even feel like it's probably very uncommon even today to have like an open world driving game where the whole goal is to explore Pacific Northwest and just eventually get to whatever. But you just sort of like, oh, look, there's a boat. Oh, look, there's a cow in that barn. It's awesome. And of course, simulating things that are possibly exist or maybe not. Here's a UFO by the creators of Flight Simulator. Here I'm about to capture some buildings in San Francisco. Elite, not the best looking port of Elite, but for sure very sort of capable and fast. That's another thing about DOS and DOS machines, PCs. What they couldn't do in graphics and sound at the time, and sometimes, I'm going to say it, don't tell anyone, but sometimes it was better on the Amiga. But they made up in processor speed and RAM and hard drive space, so most of those things actually play very fast and fluid in comparison to platforms that maybe had a bit more colors and sound at the time. And of course, from a serious space simulator to not so serious story-based Wing Commander, of course, legendary Wing Commander. And if you're going to go in space and pilot some things in space, might as well just go to Star Wars, right? So Here's a Star Wars X-Wing, an excellent game. So of course, strategy games. Panzer General. I picked a late war game, although very early on in the PC gaming sort of thing, war games actually were extremely popular. There was so many of them, and they were as accurate as they could be at the time. And it was all just people moving troops and stuff. A lot of it is World War II centered. Tons of titles. It's a genre that kind of I feel like died off maybe, but PC was its main battleground. All right, so Dune 2, not the first RTS, not by even a long shot, but for sure the one that's set the conventions of the genre for, well, about the next decade, really, and were copied and really not changed much. But
what was the first RTS?
it's debatable, but on the computers, probably the Ancient Art of War. On home computers, there are strategy games that play in real time before that. I think even on some consoles. Not my area of expertise, but they're there. And of course, XCOM, right? Tactical-based game. I'm really screwed right now, as people always are when they play XCOM. The original XCOM is very hard to play it. That's one thing I love about XCOM. You'll lose 30 times, and when you win, eventually you'll feel really, really good. And then you'll die like in the next 5 minutes. It's amazing, an amazing emotional experience. Of course, everybody knows SimCity, but nobody remembers political simulators like Crisis in the Kremlin, where you get to try to prevent the Union from falling apart while appeasing your cabinet. It's very difficult not to get kicked out. And Yeltsin looking at you disapprovingly. Adventure games. All right, adventure games were a big thing. Still are, really, but the original King's Quest was a launch title or semi-launch title for the IBM PC Junior. So Sierra really developed their graphical adventure system for the PC. IBM PC Junior never took off, but Sierra's main platform from that moment on was the IBM PC. And of course here, beautiful EGA screen from Space Quest 3. Look at that beautiful painted background from Quest for Glory 4. Beautiful. And of course, all the way out to Super VGA screens of very underrated Leisure Suit Larry 7. It's a great game. Play it. Nobody likes this one, but it's great. Of course, we're Sierra. There's LucasArts, second version of Maniac Mansion. Everybody knows this game, right? Monkey Island series, amazing. Full Throttle, gritty biker. The solution to many puzzles is to just punch a person in the face. Makes sense? Amazing. And of course, not just Sierra and LucasArts made adventure games, although they made a lot of them. Here's Normality, British Adventure, first-person 3D, but every company at that time made adventure games. People who only made flight simulators stopped and made adventure games. And there's like hundreds of them in between, like on PC in between 1990 and like 1995. So many terrible ones and great ones as well. But there's a lot if you want to dig. First-person shooters. Do I even need to say anything? Right? Wolfenstein 3D. Not the first-person shooter. Not even the first-person shooter from id Software. But again, the game that set the conventions of the genre for quite a while and spread and became very, very famous. Any game where you get to kill Hitler is good. IMO, I don't know. Of course, that leads to Doom. What else? No introductions needed. I assume everybody played Doom, right? Somebody not play Doom? I was afraid of that. Duke Nukem 3D, of course. All of these games, by the way, are being demoed here on the third floor. Great, love it. Blood, one of my favorite games of all time. And of course, some underrated stuff that went under the radar and disappeared and probably will never get reissued because of a license hell. But here's Bethesda's sequel to Terminator Future Shock. Really good first-person shooter, set in Terminator universe, drivable vehicles, multiplayer, amazing. There are, in between years of 1993 and 1997, there are hundreds of FPS games on DOS. Hundreds. Terrible. They're terrible. A lot of them are terrible. That's what people figured out. Doing what id Software did is very hard. There's actually a screenshot from Lethal Tender, a game that I like. This is not a good game, but it has so many big ideas like hub worlds and stealth and regional damage. None of them work. It's fascinating. And the company that developed it is called Pie in the Sky Software, which I think is just amazing. But wait, there's more. 3D stuff, really, because like I said previously, because IBM PCs made up in RAM and CPU. 3D stuff was really good on PC, very amazing at the time. I'm really not going to list any of those games, except for maybe this is Bethesda's open world 3D Terminator game where you can play either Kyle Reese or the Terminator, and it has drivable vehicles and stores you can go into and recreates half of Los Angeles. And it's incredibly hard to play, and it looks terrible, well, today, but you can see there's a person. It's quite an achievement, technically, and nobody remembers that ever existed, but this is like the first of Bethesda's Terminator games. Full motion video. This guy, I didn't make it a video so he wouldn't upstage me because he's quite big in this game, Mr. Chris Walken. But if you're into FMV games, the ones that work cross-platform, like your Night Traps or Slam City with Scottie Pippen, whatever, all of them had better quality on DOS because faster drives, faster processors, better decompression routines, and of course, later on in the mid-90s, you have stuff like, oh, they just advertised, we have so much video that we're on 7 discs, on 8 discs, on 4 discs. Yeah, we have so many discs. The gameplay is amazing. So there's that. Another area, edutainment. Do I need to say what game this is? This is everyone's favorite game that allows them to die of dysentery. And of course, this is the hidden world of Nintendo licenses. You'll discover so many interesting Nintendo-named branded titles only on DOS. And, well, yeah, that happened. That's an actual screenshot of me playing. It's not doctored. It's amazing. Great titles, what can I say? Adult games. Of course, they exist. They're there, open platform. My amazing Tetris skills on display. Thank you very much. And of course, shareware. Here's the shareware thing. Like that was invented way early, way before anything else. But it was kind of a thing where I give you stuff, and then you send me money if you like it. Well, that didn't really work out until really in the early 90s, a little company called Apogee figured out, well, we don't have to give the whole thing away, which you can just be legally allowed to distribute up to the third of the finished game. That's a really weird concept today, right? Would be to say that up to a third of the finished game was given away, and then you were supposed to send $50, $60. But yeah, and business boomed. Those companies grew from 2 guys in a basement to giant publishers and developers. It's quite interesting. Here's a very famous example, Jazz Jackrabbit by Epic Mega Games. I can't believe they changed their name from Epic Mega Games. Come on, really? By, of course, Cliff Bleszinski and Tim Sweeney. But of course, it's not just the big names. It's the little guys did it too because it was, shareware. You could do whatever you want and ask for money later if people liked it. They paid you. There's Steve Moraff's World. It's a dungeon crawler, like with a simultaneous four directional view. That's a cool idea. And of course, Hugo's House of Horrors. Not the first shareware adventure, I believe, but very close. They all kind of came out the same year. Legend. Not a great game, but everybody remembers it who played it. And of course, another reason to get into DOS gaming is big boxes. Those games came in giant boxes with giant manuals on like 50 discs. It's cool to have on your shelf. If you have many of them on your shelf, everyone will like you. What can I say? Here's an example of an Infocom title. Of course, those were very famous. Those are from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. A button, that thing, a sleeping thing, a microscopic space fleet bag, belly button fluff, and of course you can see there's quite a few pages here, a thick manual. Another good example, I don't own this is not my picture, but this Wing Commander 3 film can. And missing from this picture is a shirt, a t-shirt, and a VHS tape with the making of. And in fact, I brought some, how much time do I have? I actually brought some big boxes to show off, so I might as well just do that. Oh wow, it's already 2:55, so I don't really have that much time. Oh wait, I'm going to, I got plenty of time. What am I talking about? Sorry, I'm so distracted. This parking lot where my car was flooded, so I literally just went through like a foot of water. It's great. I feel very refreshed. All right, so what do I have here? I have a bunch of stuff. I don't even know what I brought. So here's Deja Vu. Nothing special, but it has this cheap sort of mask face thing. I don't know. It has a face on it, so I brought it. So here's one of those amazing Title Slam City with Scottie Pippen. And as you can see, it's a quality game because it says so much action. It's on 4 CDs. Oh, boy. It's the most 90s thing ever. If you ever played this game, I'm sorry, but also the most 90s thing, right? The rap. Oh, it's great. Love those games. Here's some stuff to demonstrate how different this was. This is another political simulator, Balance of Power. Technically, this is not for DOS because this game comes with a runtime version of Windows, a cut-down version of Windows 1 that only is able to run this game. So, but I don't know how I'm supposed to do this, but basically, if you look at the manual, and this is what I love to show the console people being like, this is what the manual is like. It's like the most boring thing. This tells you like this is the geopolitics in the nuclear age. They're not kidding. It's about as exciting as it sounds, but it's actually a really great game. What else do I have here? Oh, yes, of course. Where in the USA is Carmen Sandiego? And of course, that one I have to open because I don't know if you can hear it, but it's quite heavy because apart from the discs classified, it comes with this giant book for reference. You needed this to play because you needed to be knowledgeable about the USA. I should have read that before my citizenship exam. What was I thinking? But either way, there's all this stuff here, a scrapbook, a manual. What is that? Oh, all right. Quick reference card for some corrections. And of course, oh boy, a map of the United States. There's even some more stuff here. Oh my God. There's some registration cards and whatnot. But like all this stuff you didn't get when you bought console games. And PC games are full of them. I mean, this is not limited, obviously, to the specifically DOS games. Most computer games sort of did that around that time, but it just, I don't know. DOS games have the most, I feel. I don't know if that's not based on any official data, just speculation. And of course, another thing is copy protection, right? So games were easy to copy, unlike cartridges. So the developers, of course, put all kinds of measures against that. Usually it was, I don't know, enter word 50 enter word 5 on page 50 of the manual before you play. That's kind of boring, right? So all kinds of other things were invented. And Another World, one of my favorite games of all time. Let's see if I can open it with one hand and not ruin the box. Maybe not. But this has a code wheel. So during the boot up, the game would ask you to align those letters and numbers together, and then it would ask you for one of those sequences inside one of those windows. Allegedly hard to copy. I don't know. People on Twitter has been sharing me their own copied Another World wheels for forever. So plenty of people did that. And of course, here is a bit something like very involved here, right? Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, great movie. Decent game, actually a really good adaptation, I feel. Okay, I really gotta eat that mic, right? So there are certain things there. First of all, $20 off the ad-lib card. Do you think I can still mail this in? Because the ad-lib card's like $700 these days. And I really want one. I don't have one. I bought the OPL32 LPT yesterday. And don't judge me. And of course, so for copy protection, right? It has all kinds of stuff here. Here's the manual. Here are the discs. But of course, the most interesting thing is the dad's Grail diary that he didn't mail to the Marx Brothers, but here I have it. And it's actually very intricate. All the pages that you saw in the movie are in here. But of course, this is provided for the copy protection reasons, because you would not be able to play the game without reading this first. But this is actually a very well-constructed piece. But that's not all. That wasn't enough. In the library section, the game gives you a selection of a randomized sequence of letters and numbers, and then you need to sort of decode a sequence of symbols out of it, which is impossible without this card, which was also impossible to copy back in the day when copiers couldn't do color and it would blend all together. So you see there's blue and red on here at the same time, and of course you would get this thingy, and with that, you'll be able to see what your sequence was. So those were the kind of the copy protection measures. There are some more involved, especially in the French games. I don't have any on me, sadly, but like French got some really involved copy protection schemes with like Alone in the Dark games and stuff with like a deck of cards that you had to align together. It's crazy. I don't know why. Everybody pirated them anyway, right? So, but here's this. Here's Might and Magic, not copy protection, but something of the pretty much the bygone era. First of all, there is a map, right? And then, of course, the manual. But most importantly, because this was a game you had to manually map. You were meant to map the game. You could not get through the game without physically mapping it because you weren't able to tell what was in any particular square in an RPG until you were standing on it and the game told you. So you needed to create a map. And for you to do so, a little pad is provided for you to make your own maps with. And even an example, last page of the manual has a little example for you, just sort of for the first town, so to set you on your journey. That's something that doesn't happen anymore, the sort of interaction between the physical and the virtual worlds. What else do I have here? Oh yeah, of course, Crisis in the Kremlin. I have it because I had to get it. I love this box because something, as a Russian, this was made before the overturn of the government, but the pictures at the time were so recent on this that, like, here it says, Yeltsin calls for a strike. Like, this was made during that interesting time in my country and my lives. But that comes with a huge book called Class, How Russians Really Live. And I, for some reason, still haven't read this. I've been meaning to read this and find out how true it was. The game is pretty accurate, actually, surprisingly. The game is surprisingly accurate. I don't know about this book, but this whole book is just thrown in there for you to read when you play the game. It's not necessary to play the game. It's not necessary for the game to read this book, but it's in there. Of course, we also have stuff like non-standard boxes. I got one, actually, here, yesterday. This is Prince of Persia 2. Great for, I don't know what it's great for. Like, people thought it was to stand out on the store shelves, but then like stores hated them, and you're going to hate them when you try to like organize your shelves. But those, that's a pretty unique box shape. Yeah. And the reason it's that shape is because the first Prince of Persia game was that shape. So those would be the two games that looked like that together, right? Full Throttle, not really going to open it. The cool thing about it is it comes with like a 400-page manual and the guide for Full Throttle. And if you've ever played Full Throttle, you'll be questioning, well, how do you stretch that game for 400 pages to make a guide of? And I will tell you, there's 2 pages. You know the puzzle where you have to grab the guy by his nose? The guy who wrote the guide managed to squeeze 2 pages out of it. So where was he when I was writing my high school papers? I don't know. But talented individual. This I have to open. This is Falcon 3.0. And if I'm ever like burgled in my house and I'm in there, I'm going to use this box to hit them because it's the heaviest box I have, and I have to open and show you why. Oh boy. So we got some floppies, obviously. A very advanced game for the time. There's 5 floppies altogether. Some shrink wrap, $60. A map, which you needed to navigate like a real pilot and for copy protection purposes. Oh, things are falling. All right. Registration card, I don't know why, so they would sell you ads. Quick reference, in case you forgot what one of the million buttons did on your keyboard, which you needed to fly a plane. Here they are. Literally, like half the keyboard is being used. Disk exchange. You've bought this, and you were like, "Oh, I bought a 3.5-inch game for my 5.25 drive, and I need to now pay $10 to exchange it." There you go. Product ad. Troubleshooting card. It only now informs you that you would need 600 kilobytes of free memory to play this. Which, well, this is a pre-CD-ROM, so you might be able to squeeze out of it, but it would be nice if they just put it on the box with like a big red button, because this is a major bummer. Of course, more copy protection stuff in the form of a communications handbook, right? If you ever wanted Falcon 3.0 shot glass, or a shirt, or mini plane model, or a mug, or I don't know, a box like 3 sizes too big for, I don't know, what is this? Oh, it's a poster, sorry. So, yeah, you could buy all those things for actually not a lot of money. Oh, wow, $30 for a tape. Wow, amazing. But of course, the reason it's so heavy is because it comes with this giant flight manual, which is not unlike a real flight manual. Actually, it's very much like the real flight manual. It reads like one. And the game would be impossible to play without it. And it's, I'll tell you how many pages. Okay, before the index 322, you would need this. All of this you would need to play that. That's what I'm talking about when I say the audiences for these games was different. And that's why if you're into consoles and you never played DOS games, I don't know if any of you are, but you should play DOS games, is what I'm saying. So that's that for the box presentation, and so let's move on. Big shout out about the big boxes. There is a group on Facebook called Big Box PC Game Collectors, where you can interact with other established and respected individuals in the PC game box collecting world. It's not about sales. It's not about asking how much this old game I found in my attic is worth, or do you think this is a fair price, or does anyone want to buy my fake Ultima 1 that I just made? It's mostly for asking honest questions and just showing off your collections, no matter big or small. Just don't stack your, don't. If anybody took a picture, that don't post it in that group. I'm going to get kicked out and banned forever, please. So, yeah. So, main DOS era, of course, covers quite a lot of time, from 1981, from the launch, to about 1997. 1997 is when the last few big titles, what we would call now AAA, come out, right? Like Fallout, Last Express, Shadow Warrior, Blood, bunch of expansions for 1996 games, plenty of DOS games in 1997 still. By 1998, DOS is gone as a major platform, kind of, from the game publishing, but that means nothing, because at that point the internet starts picking up, and you have all those people making games essentially freeware. The DOS scene actually still kind of goes on, but in the late 90s it was still very much there. Like, I love this game called Jump and Bump, sort of a 4-player simultaneous not hot seats, just simultaneous deathmatch game where you play as those cute bunnies who jump on each other's heads, and then the other person explodes into like blood and guts, and it's great. And you can play 4 people if you have like a joystick, 2 people on the keyboard, 1 the mouse, 1 the joystick at the same time. It's great fun with the liquor. So Happy Land Adventures. If I hear, I was not around here at that time, but I hear this game was played a lot in school libraries around that time. Apparently very popular. DOS game, free. And even the commercial release from 2015, this is an actual commercial title, a port of Retro City Rampage to a DOS, to DOS, MS-DOS, that was capable of running on a vintage machine. Got a physical release with a map and a box. I did not bring it, but it's quite good. I own it. So today, what can we do to play these games today? Well, there's many different ways, kind of. So of course, the easiest way for somebody who has never experienced them would be go on Steam or Good Old Games, GOG.com, where all those games sort of pre-bundled with emulators. You'd pay $5 and you would play them. About a couple of hundred games are available currently on both platforms that are DOS, that are originally DOS exclusives. Not a bad selection. I mean, over what, like 10 years, I would expect it to be slightly more, but it's picking up. All right, and these are the games that are accessible to people easily. If you don't want to stick to that sort of selection, there is, of course, many different emulators, as there are for everything. They're always improving and always being worked on, and they're different ones for different purposes. But DOSBox is a sort of primary used one, where that emulator was specifically developed for games, not so much for accuracy, but to be able to run games. And as a result, it works great with games, and most games work at this point just fine with it. Don't use the main branch; it hasn't been updated in like a decade, because people can't agree what changes to put in. But it's been developing like every day in different sort of offshoots. I use it. All the screenshots that you've seen in this presentation, all the videos, were taken with it and not off the actual machines. It's very convenient. I use it for all my DOS purposes. Like 99% of the time, I use DOSBox. What to play if you've never played DOS games, or even if you have. There is this. If you do a search, a Google search. Use the search engine of your preference to look for a list of worthwhile DOS games. This will be the first result to a Reddit page with this giant JPEG with 100 titles, which were all DOS exclusives. None of them are Windows games. And it's giant. It's a huge JPEG. I actually have printed it on my wall. I can give you a link to, like, if you want to print it out, I have a better quality version. I didn't make it, but the author sent it to me. And there's 100 games that all of them are worth playing. Just this 100 is worth playing. Of course, DOS is a massive thing, open platform. Anybody could make games for it. So there's thousands and thousands. We don't know how many games there are for DOS. And we're still finding them. And some of them, I'm sure, are lost. And of course, there are other ways that I did not put into this presentation, but Mr. Jason Scott here will tell you all about it. You can play DOS games in a browser. If you just Google Internet Archive, DOS, will be the first result. And here's your easily accessible. Put it on every device. Every internet open, it works on phones and everything. Go to like every Verizon store, go to nearest phone, and like put Doom on it. It's great. It's awesome. And that's that. So I am Anatoly Shashkin. You can find me at DOS Nostalgic on Twitter. Don't follow me if you don't want an ending barrage of like DOS stuff. But I have to, actually, fair warning, this account is my personal account, so it's not just about DOS screenshots and games. I just generally just share whatever I feel like, especially when I'm drunk. So it's at your own risk. And you can find my video content and my podcasts and my whatever else on my YouTube channel called DOS Nostalgia. And anywhere where you can Google, use the search engine of your preference for DOS Nostalgia, I'll be there. And that's how you can get in touch with me and tell me your DOS stories. I love hearing stories, other people's stories. That's actually why I started this, because I love hearing about other people's experiences in DOS. That was it. Thank you very much.
Two things. First, just a comment. My first DOS machine didn't even have CGA. It was Hercules.
Yes. Yes.
Just a comment there.
Good comment, sir. Thank you.
Question about shareware. So
Yes.
I played like Wolf 3 and Doom and some other stuff back in the day, and Catacombs, but nowadays it seems like every single shareware game from like Apogee or Epic or any of those companies, like everyone thinks it's like the most classic game ever made, and they're all like selling for like big money on eBay and stuff like that.
Okay.
What are your thoughts about that? Is it like just an overreaction? Are they all really that great, or what's going on here?
I think it's just a nostalgic connection, right? Because those games were so well spread and were available. You could, nobody, who cares about legally, not legally, really, but like that, you could legally give it away to your friend, be like, hey, check this out. This is like, I remember bringing 2 floppies of Doom with the shareware Doom to my school and like the computer class and like playing, because there was nothing to do, and the teacher would play with us and I would just copy it, and then like that's how we got viruses back in the day. When you brought those floppies home, it was great, amazing. Actually wiped out half of my friend's hard drive because he didn't look what was in the batch file before he ran it. Come on now, really? But yeah, I feel that's just a nostalgic connection. Anything people have nostalgic connection to gets its value goes up, right? Bubsy's back, right? do I really need a better example? Like, why? Because people like all of a sudden remember that Bubsy existed, and now people love him. So that's it. Does that answer your question, or I'm not sure?
It does. Just to follow up, it's like I think you used to download the BBSs.
Yes.
And then the internet afterwards, these games. And like I used to go to Electronics Boutique, and that was like the real games.
Yes.
The more expensive games, you feel like
Yes.
you put more money into. And it feels like a lot of those games are
Forgotten?
Yeah, forgotten. And then like Halloween Harry, it's like, oh my god, Halloween. I mean, like,
Yeah, Halloween Harry is a pretty terrible game.
Someone copied it, you know. So
Yes, but it's because it was well spread. So people forgot about some of those titles, and they remember the shareware, especially the younger people. That's the thing. Like a lot of this industry is sort of like remembered by people who grew up in the early '90s, right? That's when DOS gaming is really taking off, because all of its competitors are falling apart. Amiga is not around anymore, and we have VGA graphics and faster processors, and they don't cost. Well, they still cost a lot of money, but they don't cost like a price of a car anymore. So people can get them, and people bought computers to do this. So yeah, that's what all there is to it. I feel. I don't know. It's not backed up by any data. Again, it's just a speculation. Anybody else?
Yeah, I was about 12 during that time, and I can confirm, when you don't have a credit card at 12 years old, your computer ends up being filled with mostly the shareware versions of games, and you played the demo over and over and over again, and it's not until a little later.
And of course, you had the shovelware CDs. I'm sure helped later, so you would get like a whole bunch of games for not a lot of money.
it's just ironic because the stuff they pumped out then that they thought that was old crap and you forgot it. That's the stuff that people remember.
It's true. I mean, some of those games, some of those like big titles were with like millions and millions of dollars. Like Doom and Duke Nukem was not millions of dollars. So but those I remember. But those are like examples of like a big hits. I would like stuff like Moraf's World and stuff is more of what I think of, and even that's remembered pretty well. I'm actually surprised by how well Moraf's stuff is remembered. But yeah, anybody else?
Do you have an old machine you play games on?
I have a few old machines that I don't play games on because DOSBox is so convenient. But DOSBox is not exactly accurate sometimes, and yes, so I have like some of the things I have that are just nostalgic. I have I don't know if you know, I have an IBM PS2 Model 30, which is a PC XT replacement from 1987. But it's one of those cases that's like a office look. I just thought that's one of the machines I spent a lot of time on when I was just starting out. I just have a nostalgic connection to it. It's almost useless, but it has the MCGA on it, so you can like play like Prince of Persia at a really low frame rate when things are falling. But I mean, it runs stuff. I mean, just because it's an 8088 doesn't mean it's terrible. But but for games, those are the games that actually don't emulate quite well. The games that are specifically targeting this very old processor. So I use that to play those games. Just I don't play those games often. And of course, I have some newer machines. I was just been restoring one that's like an early Pentium, which is not exactly DOS era, but very DOS capable for more resource-hungry games. So I have a few. I don't have like a museum full of. I have very little space where I can put them like under the TV and like in between the desk and like in the bedstand. Like it's somewhere like I can shove a chassis. It's so yeah. If I had more room, I'd probably have more machines, and if I had more money, for sure. But yeah, so that's that. Yes.
Are you using that with your real hardware or are you using that with DOS?
I'm using it with real hardware because it's actually specifically bought it for a machine. One of my newer machines, I have a Pentium 4 that I literally picked up off the side of the road, and I put in Soundbuster Live into it, which is not great. And specifically, it doesn't have an OPL chip. It has an OPL software emulation, and it's bad. So I'm just going to put that dongle on it and route everything to every time there's an ad-lib game, I'm just going to route it to the LPT and hopefully hear that sweet OPL music that I love so much. Another? Yes, sir?
So, Flight Simulator is too advanced for me, but
Yes.
my Airline expectation, like in 1990, like what I did was that before I put the disc CD in, I had to first sit down with the manuals for
Yes.
at least an hour,
Yes.
whiteboard, read everything and whatever. If you want like the NES manuals or Super NES are like 10 pages long and they're very small.
Mhm.
If you watch it on YouTube, like nobody would be bothered to read the manual. But if you know what button is to jump or whatever, it's like if it's not completely self-explanatory, like it will refuse to read the manual.
Right.
So what do you think is the difference between PC gamers and console gamers?
Well, you would have to. I mean, like I said, it's not often the case, and that's actually good question for me specifically because I grew up in a country that didn't have legal distribution of DOS games. I've never seen the manuals, never, not until well, way later, where I was able to like afford them and they would get officially published. But I've seen like most of those things I've only seen when I moved here, so I didn't see them till like 15 years ago with my own two eyes. And I played those games without manuals, even some of the flight simulators, like Retaliator. So I never figured out how to land on Retaliator. If somebody did, please tell me. Still, it's been 25 years. And but yeah, which is why actually I'm not a fan of many RPGs. I don't have that nostalgic connection because I just couldn't play them. A lot of the early RPG stuff is sort of is in the manual. Like sometimes you can't even in the very early stuff. There was not enough memory to store all that stuff. So you would go to a certain location. It would be like, read page 54, and I'm like, what? What page 54? I just copied it from a friend. And why am I saying? I don't even understand that it says read page 54. It's in English, and I don't speak it, so I don't know what I'm doing playing this game. So that's that. So yeah, but the expectation is you would not for full throttle like this. Literally, like it's so heavy. I should probably open it and show the manual and the guidebook. I don't know why it's in there. The biggest waste of paper is inside this box. But yeah, mostly you were expected to read a lot of the stuff, especially in the case with well stuff like Falcon. But even not Falcon, like RPGs, you would need all that stuff too. Absolutely. So that's a big difference, and something that I think is fun to show off today. Being like, hey, look how different this is. Like balance of power, right? You open it and it reads like I don't know. I don't know what it reads. It doesn't read very exciting, but you need it to play that very exciting game. It's exciting in your head when you play it, not so much on the screen.
You mentioned the MT32 sound card.
Yes.
What is anything external?
It was not made for. There's actually MT32 on the second floor, connected to a Sharp computer, which is I don't know how long the Expo is going to last. So they have scheduled where you can see where MT32 music is playing, but you can see it, and also a sound canvas right above it, like sandwiched on top. But it was a sort of low cost for musical instruments, low cost, a professional, like lower grade professional synthesizer. It was programmable synthesizer. It wasn't meant specifically for DOS games. It was made by Roland as a sort of like here's a $700 thing that you can make music with if you have something to control it with a MIDI controller. So Roland also made the LAPC sort of converter that's what you would connect to your IBM PC to get the MIDI pass-through to then get to MT32. So it just sort of stuck as a PC device because, well, it sounded really good, and it was, I guess, somewhat affordable. I mean, if you're going to spend $5,000 on the computer, you might as well spend $700 on an MT32 and then like another $200 on the lap. Yeah, it was very expensive. Now when people tell me like they had an MT32 when they were like 8 years old, I just look at them and I'm like, yeah, because no, at that point in time I still had a PC. So at that point in time I didn't have anything. I imagined the computer. But then I had a PC speaker and then eventually upgraded to the Sound Blaster. So like yeah, I was a poor kid in Russia. So but very lucky to discover DOS games. What can I say?
Looking for like more online community resources. I found a couple places like Logons.
Mhm.
They're really good.
Logons is good.
Do you have any particular favorites?
Online communities, I'm in a few like Russian ones. I feel like they're more active away from like the U.S. I don't know. I know the discussion has changed in the recent years, thank goodness. But like, there's a lot of like legal battles between users, like people would get into like arguments about defending corporations, and I don't know if it's still like that, but I'm not particular. I'm active on Twitter. That's where I talk to people on Twitter. It's not exactly like I would say a locked community, but like if you're on Twitter and you're into DOS games and you only follow people who talk about DOS games, that's sort of you create and manage your own community where you are able to manage it in the way you see fit, block whoever you want, and only read stuff from whoever you want and stuff. And yes, of course, there's always other stuff on there, but so far I'm not really part of like Wogons or anything but I'm also Wogons is very good for technical stuff. There's a very knowledgeable people there, and I'm not a hardware guy at all. Like you put two unmarked cards in front of me, like two models of a Sound Blaster that don't have the markings on them, I will not be able to tell you which one is which. I'm just being honest. I'll tell you what to play on them, but I won't tell you what they are. Anybody else? All right. Well, actually, I'm kind of right in the dot, right? Wow, I'm surprised. Thank you very much for coming. I hope you've learned something, or at least discovered what I look and sound like, which is like I'm terribly sober right now, so that's a factor. But keep playing DOS games, and if you have any stories and you don't follow me like on Twitter or my Facebook page or comments on YouTube. Oh God, comments on YouTube. Just leave me a good one for once. All right, just like tell me a story. Tell me a story how you first discovered what was your first CD-ROM game, or when you first went from 4 colors to 16, or from monochrome text to from Hercules to colors. It must have been a revelation. I would like to hear that story. So that's that. Thank you very much again. Pleasure to be here.